I thought today what I would do is just show you how to plant a seed potato.
Before we go outside to plant our seed potatoes, I just wanted to introduce a few basic concepts. Now this table, the text is very small on the screen. I do apologise. If you can't enlarge it, just pop a message in the comments and I'll be happy to message you this table in a larger format. This table will also be in a guide that I'm currently writing. So the table explains how we categorise potatoes, which is quite important when it comes to planting them. So in the UK and most of Europe, we classify them under three different classifications. First early, which are the ones that you plant the earliest and you would harvest the earliest. Second early, and then main crop. In the US, this is usually categorised as determinate for your first and second early, and indeterminate for your main crop. Now, first early and second early grow on one layer, so the idea is that they will grow in that area of compost or soil and not grow out of it. As with main crop, they will grow on more than one layer, so you have to heap up the compost or soil as the plant grows to make sure that the potatoes are not exposed to sunlight, because if they do, they turn green, and that makes them toxic. So when I say earthing up on this chart, that means that process of putting soil on top to make sure that the potatoes don't go green. So where it says, do you need to earth up? No, you don't for first and second earlies, but you do for main crop. Chitting we're going to get onto at a moment, but yes, basically you can chit all potatoes, but it's optional for your main crop. When would you plant them out? Well, in the UK it's any time from March, but just protect the plants from frost. And same with your second earlies. And then for your main crop, generally people plant them from April, quite commonly in the UK mid-April, but you can't plant them as late as May if the temperature is quite low, and that's what I've done this year. And I've also put at the end of the chart there when you can expect to get your first harvest. So anything from 10 weeks for a first early to 22 weeks for a main crop. Now I know some of you will be asking, what about new potatoes and salad potatoes? Well, they fall under your classification of first and second early or determinate. So that will make your main crop, your indeterminates, your bakers and keepers. Who knew there was so much involved in growing potatoes? But now I'm just going to very quickly describe about chitting and why you would do it.
And the process of chitting them is you just get your seed potato that you've bought from the garden centre or online or wherever, or that you've harvested last year and managed to keep as a seed potato. You take that and you just stick it in something like this, we find like just the egg containers work really well, and you just stick that on a shelf. Something like a windowsill works quite well on a north, as long as it's north facing. You don't want to get a load of sunlight, particularly sort of all day sun. So you do that, and gradually over the course of weeks it grows these little sprouts, these there from the potato eyes. What you can do if you want, if you haven't got very many potatoes or you're particularly frugal, you can slice up your potato, and then it will grow eyes generally on each part of the potato. And depending on the size of the potatoes, it depends on how small you can slice it up. What I would say is when we're getting onto main crop, where some people choose not to chit, I have chitted.
So now we're in the garden, and I've mixed up a planting mix of peat-free multi-purpose and bloodfish and bone, about 3 handfuls of bloodfish and bone per 40 litres. And I'm planting into these potato sacks. Obviously you can use different sorts of planting mix. You can use your own garden compost, include some garden soil if you want to. However, I find it tends to compact a bit and isn't too great for potatoes. You can use proper potato feed instead of bloodfish and bone, or you can use a synthetic plant slow release feed, or even a feed during the growth if you haven't got any when you're putting in the planting mix. But I just find bloodfish and bone and a peat-free multi-purpose is the simplest way and gets me some great quality potatoes. It's an expensive way to grow potatoes because of course they will just grow in the ground with an improved soil, but I like to do this because then I will reuse this compost later on my various beds, so it's not wasted as such, and it's not expensive as such because I'm getting two uses out of it. Now we're at the stage where I'm just firming it down. You generally fill these sacks to about 1/4 to 1/3 full, and then you're ready to plant your seed potatoes. I would normally plant 2 potatoes in a sack this size for a main crop, but I'm going to plant 4 because I'm not after particularly big potatoes. You'll see here at this stage this potato has quite a few eyes with the sprouts coming out. I could remove one if I wanted to, or I can remove them all but one if I want to, and that will just get me one plant instead of several potato plants. So here I'm going to do is I'm going to remove one lot of sprouts. So I've still got a couple of good sprouts on there, which will give me a couple of plants. And essentially the number of plants you have in one space will determine the size. So the more plants you have in one space, the smaller the potatoes. If you've just got one big plant, then you'll get larger potatoes. This is the method I use for main crop, where I'm just planting on one level because they'll grow up through the bag. But if I was planting earlies, I'll use a separate method which I'm going to show you in a moment. I now like to put on top a planting mix of 10 to 15 centimeters, that's 4 to 6 inches. I'm now just going to give it a gentle firm down. The great thing about these bags is you can move them round easily because they have handles. So I've finished my first lot, and this is just me planting a second bag in the style I would for first and second earlies or determinates. So I filled the container back up to about 1/4 full and just popped in my potatoes just like before. You see here I've just put 2 potatoes in. Now this would be my normal way of doing main crop, and then I would just put my layer on top. But now what I'm doing is I'm putting another 10 to 15 centimeters of compost on top. That's 4 to 6 inches. I've got my correct depth now. I'm going to stick another 2 seed potatoes in, but you can see in different corners. So essentially it's 4 potatoes all spaced out in different corners of the container. Now just putting on another 10 to 15 centimeters of compost, that's 4 to 6 inches. I've firmed down, and that's that one done. The last unusual thing I do is I just put a couple of tools or sticks over the top to stop the cats leaving me any gifts on top.